Just a reminder, this is your third and final call for class number 1. Third and final call. We want to remind everyone that this show will be live streamed through Ringside Live. Visit www.ringsidelive.co to visit all the shows this week, courtesy of Avera Health. Please join me in welcoming our judge this evening, Logan Newsom. Logan is from Olton, Texas, and the owner of Newsom Livestock, a club lamb operation in the Texas Panhandle that focuses on club lamb production for youth exhibitors around the country. He owns and operates this business alongside his wife, Jenny, and kids, Graham, Gracie Joe, and Cub. Again, let's give our judge a warm welcome. This is your first call for class number 2 in the Market Lamb Show. First call for class number 2. This is your second call for class number 2. Second call for class number 2.
Yeah, I can see that. We'll figure it out. I think a really nice class to get started here. Not a lot of entries, but I think we got sheep with quality here as we kind of had an opportunity to sort through in my mind, and I think there's a logical place to start. I think initially one that comes in, and I'll be the first to admit that just from a maturity standpoint, and a condition standpoint, he's a little further along, and I think you can probably tell that ringside. But at the same time, I think that's the quality sheep that you analyze that one when he's propped up, and I think that sheep gives us a very, very neat view from the side. His shoulder shape's good. He's good in terms of his underlying quality. That's a sheep that's level spine. He's big in terms of his feature. And I think upon close inspection, that's the big backed fresh one that handles today extremely, extremely well. I think a real logical place to start in my mind. I'll be honest, in second and third, I think it's real close. And I think you've got sheep that are maybe at different points in their life, just from a maturity standpoint, maybe an age standpoint. And so I think it gets a little close in my mind. I think when you step back and just kind of analyze the fundamentals, I like the young lady's weather that comes in second there. I think from a build standpoint, and that one's genuine body shape I felt like was just a little bit better. That's easily the leanest and the greenest and probably quite frankly the skinniest one that we've got in the class. But that sheep's got shape, that sheep's got touch and tone. And again, that one I read as just being more dynamic in terms of the center portion of his body. I think that's a sheep that's level spine. And depending on what the future looks like for him, I think a sheep that's got some opportunity down the road. I think a real basic one that comes in third. That sheep's got muscle. That sheep's got some look. That sheep's got some feature. He's one that I read as just being a little flatter in the center portion of his body. I think one that you'd like to see just a little more freshness and tone and touch up high. But that's a sheep that wedges in proportions accordingly. He's not quite as big featured and as fuzzy and all that stuff down low, but that's a high quality sheep. Again, that was a close pair there in second and third. Good class. Let's congratulate those exhibitors.
Class number 1 results. First place goes to Cruz Sutton, second, Ashlyn Tangen, and third, Talissa Tangen. This is your first call for class number 3. First call for class number 3. This is your second call for class number 3. Second call for class number 3.
I think another high quality class. I think you've got 5 individuals out here that you just analyze them each one in their own right. I think you've got sheep that check a lot of boxes just in terms of where we're at and within the industry, and sheep that have muscle and sheep that have look. And I think as we kind of sort down amongst these top 3 and kind of start to analyze them and maybe where you kind of draw that line, I think the one that wins in my mind, I think does so. Just in terms of the sheep that checks the most boxes and maybe the one that we want to beat up as far as having the most faults or having the least amount of faults. I think that's a sheep that you analyze him initially whenever he comes in the ring, and I think that's a sheep that reads with shape and quality. That's a sheep that props up accordingly. One that just in terms of tone and touch and freshness and handling quality, I felt like excelled his contemporaries. He's one that I like the look and the balance that he gives us from the side. I'd like to see that sheep just a little more flexible in how he handles his hip and hind leg, and I think there's some issues amongst a couple of the other ones that directly precede him, so he probably gets maybe a little bit of a pass on that. But that's a sheep that reads with quality from the outside, and again, one that handles extremely well just from a freshness standpoint. I like that one to start. I like just the feature and the substance that comes in that weather that comes in second. That one's big-legged. He's busted open underneath. He's got the extra foot. He's got the extra feature and width progression. That's a sheep that handles big and shapely over the top side of his skeleton. He wants to read, in my mind, just a little more mature and a little plainer at the base of his body. And I think amongst the top 3, that's probably the one that from a structure standpoint, I probably find the most fault in. He wants to get a little more straight and upright in terms of his shoulder. He doesn't handle his hip and hind leg quite as attractive as maybe the ones on either side of him, but that's a sheep that's got width, a sheep that's got substance, a sheep that's got some handling quality. I thought he fell into that second spot pretty logically in my mind. I don't think there's any question that the outlier probably comes here in third. That is the tallest, frontest, probably wildest looking one from the outside in. That sheep's got some extra length and angulation up front. He's leveled down his spine, and amongst the top 3, that is probably the sheep that I'm the most comfortable with in motion. I think at the same time, that's the flattest and the narrowest one in terms of the base of his body and his chest. And I think the biggest thing for me is when you step in behind that one, we've got to see that one bigger up high. We've simply just got to see more expansion throughout. But I don't think there's any question that from a quality perspective, that sheep offers a very, very high quality view from the side. Blue sheep that comes in fourth, that's one that you analyze that one down low, and in terms of that one's width, that's a sheep that's busted open. He's big in terms of his body shape. He's got some width progression. He's got some muscle. To me, he's the plainest in terms of his touch and tone. And when we get that sheep in motion, he wants to get just a little rounder off both ends of his skeleton, wants to be just a little more pronounced and a little more open there at the base of his shoulder. But I think that one checks a lot of boxes just from a practicality standpoint. I think a really nice one that lands there in that fourth spot. Kind of got a south down influence here, sheep that comes in fifth. And I like that sheep. That's a tall-fronted, good-bodied one. A sheep that's not probably quite as dynamic in terms of his touch and his skin and his freshness today, but that's a sheep that's got quality, a sheep that's got some balance to him. I think one that probably just ran out of gas amongst those ones in front of him, but I think a real high-quality class that we had. Let's congratulate those exhibitors on our second class today.
Bella, Tim, we need you to the makeup ring. Bella, Tim, your class is about to go in the ring. Class 2 results. First place goes to Landry Sutton. Second, Tate Goodman. Third, Brayson Brandt. Fourth, Raina Johnson. And fifth, Jalen Miner. This is the first call for class number 4. First call for class number 4. This is second call for class number 4, excuse me, second call for class number 4.
I think a fairly challenging class. I think a class that we've got 6 individuals out here that are very, very high quality. I think just good sheep, just kind of in general, just talking about them, maybe in their own right. But I think a little more of a challenging class, maybe in my mind to kind of make sense of, because I think we've got probably really and truly 6 different ones that kind of come at you in different packages and maybe kind of the attributes that they bring. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that all 3 of these, especially amongst our first 3, are going to look alike or that they should look alike or anything like that. But I think the sheep that wins, I think probably checks the most boxes in my mind. I think that's the one that you initially read and you like that one from a quality perspective. That's a sheep that's got some extra extension up front. He's good in terms of his underline. That one's shaped through his shoulder and neck and blade and how everything blends up front. I think he does that to a very, very high degree. And I think probably amongst maybe our top 4, that's one of the 2 that I felt like was the soundest, just in terms of how he gets around the ring, how he handles his front end, how he handles his hip and hind leg. And that's a sheep that I would say has enough muscle. His shape and touch and tone is good. I'd like to see that one probably a notch wider in my mind. I'd like to see that one maybe just a little more robust. But I think as you start, checking the boxes of the things that he does and kind of analyzing maybe the things that you'd like to pick apart amongst a few of his contemporaries, I felt comfortable landing on that one to start. I think the sheep that comes in second is very intriguing. That one follows a similar suit to our class winner in terms of having some extra extension up front. That's a sheep that's level down his top. He's good in how he handles his hip and hind leg. I'd say that sheep, just from a structure standpoint, that's probably the one that I want to land on whenever we've got them in motion. At the same time, I read that sheep as being one of the 2 that's maybe just a little more closed off at the base of his forerib. That's a sheep that, again, we'd like to see just maybe a little more dynamic through the center portion of his body. I'd like to see that sheep just rolled up and a little more crisp in terms of his topside skeleton and that shape up high. But that's a flat-backed, good built, really, really well-designed, well-balanced one that I felt real comfortable landing there in that second spot. I like a lot of things about this blue one when he's propped up. That sheep's big featured. That sheep's good bodied in terms of just touch and tone and handling inspection there whenever you come in close. I think that sheep does a lot of those things very, very well. That's one that when you read him from the outside in, that sheep's got some width progression. He's got some muscle shape. He props up. He's tall enough fronted. I guess I probably get the hardest on him when we get this guy loose and we get him in motion. He gets a little straighter and a little more jammed up front. He's not nearly as flexible and attractive in how he handles his hip and hind leg. I think we could free that one up and just offer a little more flexibility. I think that one's got some really neat things. We could talk about work him up a little higher in class. Sheep that comes in 4th, props up good. Need to change that one's hip and hind leg design. I think that one's shape's good. His touch is good. His design and balance from the side's good. We just need to change that one from a structure standpoint. Big muscled, wide, really, really big ribbed, kind of blue smoky colored sheep that comes in here in 5th. That one's a little plainer at the base of his body. I read that one actually of the top 5, probably the most closed off in terms of his chest and his actual body shape, but that one's touch and tone's really good. We round the class out with one that's really, really good just from a handling perspective. He's big-legged, he's wide. He's a little plainer right there over his loin. He's not quite as dynamic in how he's built from the side. But again, that was 6 really high-quality individuals. Let's congratulate those exhibitors.
Class number 3 results. First place goes to Raina Johnson. Second, Bella Tim. Third, Jarrett McLean. Fourth, Haley Bird. And fifth, Mabry Sutton. Liz Albrecht, your class is in the ring. First call for class number 5. First call for class number 5.
I think a class, maybe fairly similar to what we talked about in the last one. I think some give and take and some differences, and certainly some ones that come at you in different packages. I think we've got some sheep that are big muscled and maybe have some structure flaws, and I think we've got some good looking ones that we'd like to pack a little more onto. And I think that kind of becomes logical in my mind to go ahead and use the one that we did, because I think that's a sheep that, without question, checks some of those boxes as far as being the combination one of the class. I think that's a sheep that, in terms of his width and his shape, his muscle, touch and tone and freshness, I think he does a lot of those things to a very, very high degree. I think that's a sheep that's got some length and extension up front, some angulation just in terms of how he's built in the front portion of his body. That's one that's got some shape there to the center portion of his rib. He's not probably as dynamic at the base of his forerib and maybe just as neat and shallow there and tucked up as we would deem ideal. But I think that's a sheep that balances and proportions extremely well. I think that's a real high quality one to start with. I think a sheep that comes in second is probably one of the more intriguing ones, because I think from a structure standpoint, a basic build standpoint, especially as we talk about that one being athletic and able to go around the ring, I think he probably excels most of these in this particular class. At the same time, that sheep, especially compared to the one in front of him, he's not as dynamic in terms of his back shape. He's not as big and fresh over his loin, but that's a sheep that's athletic. He props up well. I think he gives us a high quality view whenever we get him stuck and we get him loose and in motion. Sheep that comes in thirds, without question, the biggest backed one in terms of just gnarly shape up high, touch and tone and skin quality and crispness there over his rack. And as he kind of proceeds there back, a sheep that you analyze from the outside in, and he's got some quality about his look. He's good in terms of the front portion of his body, just in how his underline blends and he balances. I think at the same time, that's a sheep that's probably the rawest right there as he hooks up over his loin edges. And I think the biggest problem that I have is when you step in behind that one, he's the narrowest of the top three just in terms of his general gauge and how he's built. I think you read that one at the base of his body and through his chest, and that's one that we'd like to just yank open underneath just to match that extra shape and touch that he's got up high. But I think a real nice one that lands in that third spot. Sheep that comes in here in fourth. You like that one propped up. That one's loin is big and shapely and crisp. A sheep that I think balances well. He's good in terms of having some body shape. He's soft and there through the rear portion of his flank. And so I think that sheep offers us a good look from the side. It's whenever we get this guy loose and in motion, he wants to be a little straighter up front. He wants to be a little shorter and rounder about his neck and shoulder. And we like to see that one just be able to flex and go. But again, that's a sheep that's got some width. He's got some forearm. He's got some feature. I think a nice one, we get him propped up. We just got to see that one go a little bit better. I think the same story is true as the one that comes in here in fifth. That's a sheep that's big-bodied. He's soft underline. He gives us a really, really neat, quality, balanced view from the side. You like his feature. You like his touch. I think initially a sheep that you read from the outside in, you read him as being big-bodied and real practical in his kind, just good kind of livestock. I think whenever we get this guy loose and we get him in motions where that one wants to fall maybe out of the top 3 or 4, we'd like to change that one from a structure standpoint, just give that one more flex and ease and athleticism as he gets around the ring. That's still a real high-quality sheep. Again, that was 5 nice sheep. Let's congratulate those exhibitors.
Congratulations to our Class 4 exhibitors. First place goes to Mackenzie Rule. Second, Riley Pankratz. Third, Liz Albrecht. Fourth, Tate Goodman. And fifth, Chainley Crow. First call for class number 6 in the Market Lamb Show. This is the first call for class number 6.
I think again a nice class. I think kind of similar story to what we've had in the last few. 5 or 6 deep, and you kind of got to draw a line in the sand and kind of figure out where you want to land. But quality sheep throughout. And I know nobody wants to show up Sioux Falls and be 4th or 5th place, but they're good. I mean, the top end's good, and in each one of these classes, I think there's quality throughout. So I commend the kids and the people in the back and the folks that kind of helped them get here, because even though we didn't have maybe quite as many numbers in each one of these classes, I think we've got a really, really nice set to sort through. I think if we analyze this class winner that kind of initially comes in, that's one that kind of you want to gravitate towards, and I think probably kind of captivates some attention just in terms of that one having a lot of feature to him. That one's really, really rugged and just very, very good in terms of his feature and in terms of, the stoutness that one reads with. And that's a sheep that I think checks a lot of boxes for me just in terms of quality, in terms of having some muscle, in terms of offering us a really balanced look from the side. That one's not quite as fresh maybe today as a couple of the other ones. You can tell, there's some skin there, fungus and whatnot that's maybe kind of agitating his skin. And so I think from a freshness standpoint, maybe it's a little bit harder to kind of read through, but that's a sheep that to me just reads with a lot of quality, a sheep that's big in terms of his feature and his forearm and his body, and then you prop that one sideways, and I think he offers us just a really, really high quality look. I think a real logical place in my mind to start with. Sheep that comes in second, just big in terms of his back shape, his touch, his tone. I don't think there's any question that one excels the class in terms of just that one's mass and shape. Over the top side of his skeleton. He's very, very good from that standpoint. He's fresh. He's presented well. He's one, as I read, maybe just being a little plainer at the base of his body. He's one that wants to get just a little drier and rawer right there in terms of his loin and where he hooks up. And I think a sheep that's maybe just a little rounder in his overall dynamic. You like that one propped up. I think he gives us a nice, high-quality, balanced view from the side. I'd like to see that one just a little more attractive out of his hip and hind leg. I'd like to see that one just a little bigger and fresher. But just from a terminal standpoint, I don't think there's any question that one certainly holds some class advantages. Sheep that comes in thirds, up and out, that one's neat looking. That sheep's got a very, very dynamic view and presence from the side. He's tall fronted, he's good shoulders, he's flat backed. I'd say the sheep in motion, one of the two that really just does an excellent job as far as getting around the ring, just being very comfortable and very athletic. He simply, as we run into that top three, we've got to make that one bigger and bolder in terms of his body. We've got to just kind of pry that one open at the base of his skeleton. You like his quality view. I think a very, very neat one when we get him turned sideways. We just got to have a little more there as we continue and work him up in class. Kind of white-faced influence sheep that we've got here in fourth. Certainly one that you like that one's body shape. He's big, he's bold in terms of the center portion of his body and in terms of how that one's width progression works. He's open up there. He's big and he's big in terms of the top side of his skeleton. He's a little plainer up front, maybe just a little more mature from that standpoint as we compare him to a couple of the other ones. And I think one thing that I'd really like to change about that one that I probably get maybe just a little harder on, I'd like to change that one's hip and hind leg design. He wants to get in at his hock a little bit. I think if we could just build that one a little bit different in terms of his general foundation and make that one just a little neater up front, I think especially amongst amongst that particular breed. I think that one offers some really, really neat things. Sheep that comes in fist, tall fronted, he's long spined, he's extended. You like that one from the outside in. That's a sheep that's got some look and some extension and some balance to him. You step in behind him, and that one wants to get a little more closed off. He's a little plainer in the top portion of his hip and just a little flatter there through his stifle. But again, a really, really high quality class. Let's congratulate those exhibitors.
Congratulations to our Class 5 winners. First place goes to Maverick Rule. Second, Liz Albrecht. Third, Cassani Crow. Fourth, Brayson Brandt. And fifth, Jalen Miner. In the ring now is our last class of the Market Lamb Show. So if we could have all of our first and second place exhibitors from each class in the makeup ring, and then thirds on deck. We'd also like to thank some of our sponsors here again. Our show ring sponsors are Iowa Craft Meats. Our elite level sponsors are CNB, First Premier Bank Card. Our trophy level sponsors include Farm Credit Services of America, Dakota Bank, Poet, Sioux Valley Energy, and Prairie Farms. Banner level sponsors are Sanford Health. And our friend of the show sponsors are Julie and Greg Hammer. This show would not be possible without them, so thank you very much for your generous support. Just want to remind everyone this is the last class, so if we could have all first and second places from each class on deck, and thirds, please be ready to go in because we will be choosing top 5.
I think a really nice way to round out our show here within our classes. I think again, we've got a set out here, and some give and take, and some variation, some differences, and probably a few of these that maybe from a maturity standpoint or maybe there or a little past, and so maybe there's some things just from a condition standpoint you'd like to dial back and lean up. But I think that's probably in my mind where the one that comes to the front, kind of that dapple colored sheep. I think you talk about freshness and youthfulness, especially as we worked into kind of some of these bigger classes. I thought that was a real logical place in my mind to start. I think that's a sheep that's body shapes right. He props up extremely dynamic, one that gives us a very, very high quality look from the side. And then upon close inspection, that one's touch and tone and freshness and body condition, I think probably excels his contemporaries. I felt like a real logical place in my mind to start with that one. I like the sheep that comes in second a good deal. That one's flexible whenever we get him loose and we get him in motion. He's tall fronted, he's high headed, he's got a very, very unique look, especially through the front portion of his body. And I think we talk about that youthfulness, especially amongst these bigger weights. That's a sheep that's maintained that extremely well. He's good at the base of his body, he's got the right turn to the center portion of his forerib. He props up with a quality view and a balanced view that he gives us from the side. He's not quite as big and fresh up high in terms of just shape and touch and freshness, especially as we analyze him there over his rack and loin. But that's a sheep that's held that and maintain that youthful quality look from the side, I think, extremely well. I thought a real logical place to land that one in that second spot. I like the sheep that comes in third just in terms of that one's basic pieces. That's a sheep that's good skin, good quality. He handles extremely fresh. He's hard muscled. I think from a carcass merit standpoint and just a real practical standpoint, I think a sheep that does a lot of good things. He's a little plainer up front as we compare him to those two in front. He wants to get just a little deeper and a little more mature there in terms of his forerib and the base of his body, kind of up there through his neck and shoulder. But that's a wide build, good sheep that's got some width progression, that's got some muscle, that's still relatively fresh. I just thought he'd fit in that third spot extremely well. Sheep that comes in here in force, rugged in his makeup. He's big and bold through the center portion of his body. You like those things about him. That one's moderate in his kind. He's practical in how he's put together. He's a little softer footed and a little plainer just in terms of his touch and tone. And I think one that's probably maybe a little more mature, just especially from a condition standpoint. But that's a big ribbed, soft made, real practical kind of weather to land there in that fourth spot. Sheep that comes in here in fifth, one that's a little leaner, a little more shapely than maybe a few of the ones that he've got in front of him. You like that one's length and how he props up. That's a long spine, level made one. He just simply runs out of gas as we get into some of those bigger sheep that are just a little stouter and a little wider. But I like that one's condition. I like that one's shape. I like that one's length of spine. Again, a really nice way to round out our classes. Let's congratulate those exhibitors.
First place in Class 6 goes to Haley Bird. Second, Ivy Tiesler. Third, Jarrett McLean. Fourth, Cassani Crow. And fifth, Ella Stiefvater. In the ring now, we are selecting champion and reserve, and we're also going to do a top 5. So if you were third in your class, if you could be in the makeup ring ready to go in, we would appreciate that. We'd again like to thank our judge today for the 2025 Market Lamb Show at Sioux Empire Livestock Show. Logan Newsom from Olton, Texas is the owner of Newsom Livestock, a club lamb operation in the Texas Panhandle that focuses on club lamb production for youth exhibitors around the country. He owns this business alongside his wife, Jenny, and kids, Graham, Gracie Joe, and Cub. Let's give him a round of applause for his work today.
Well, I think a really, really high quality set. I think I said it probably more times than I maybe needed to as we talked about each one of those classes. But I don't know how many we had here today, 5 or 6 classes, 7 classes, whatever it was. But from my perspective, there wasn't a bad one. There were some sheep, that maybe weren't quite ready today, or maybe some sheep that were a little past being ready. But I think just in terms of just having a high quality show. I congratulate the kids and the families that were a part of it, because I thought that each one of those classes there were some challenging calls in my mind, and there were some things that you maybe had to kind of make a call or draw a line in the sand with, and maybe depending on where you landed on your priorities. But there was quality sheep throughout, and so I think that each one of these classes is very well representative of what those were. I'll be the first to admit that by no means does the front lineup or the second lineup probably look like a cookie cutter, and all match the same. But I think as you analyze the basic pieces of each one of those, I think there's sheep that have some width down low, and some sheep that have some body shape. They're sheep that are built right, just from a skeletal makeup standpoint, and then we're going to put as much muscle on them as we possibly can. And I think there's some that take a couple of those things to a little higher degree, and some that are a little harder to make. And I think as you sit back and analyze, which one do you want to stand behind at the backdrop, I think the most important part is finding those ones that are unique, and in whatever areas that they are, and then can kind of check all the other boxes, and not maybe have just a tremendous amount of holes. And I think we've got some sheep out here that if somebody else is judging, you can probably flip flop around, because I think there's some sheep that certainly are very, very good in some certain aspects. We talked about each one of them in class. We talked about how kind of maybe they differentiated amongst the first and seconds and the thirds or whatever. So we won't go back and rehash that. But again, I think this is probably, I guess we still have showmanship to do, but this is probably the last time we'll have the big crowd. But I'd just like to say thank you to Sioux Falls, and for inviting me up and having an opportunity to sort through it. Again, just to reiterate, it started off with the goat show a little bit earlier, and I thought it was a very, very high quality show. So I congratulate the exhibitors that are out here, the kids that maybe didn't get along quite as well as they thought they probably should have. And that's okay. But I congratulate all those kids, because I thought we had a really, really nice show, and it was fun to evaluate from my standpoint. So as we go out and we select our champion and reserve, and I guess our top 5, let's congratulate all these exhibitors one more time.
We're also going to go ahead and begin showmanship. So if you're in the senior showmanship division, if you could be making your way to the ring as quickly as possible. Results from the Market Lamb Show: first place or grand champion goes to Haley Bird. Reserve, Maverick Rule. Third overall, Mackenzie Rule. Fourth, Cruz Sutton. And fifth, Raina Johnson.
I think a good class of seniors. Obviously watching some of these kids, show throughout the day, and I think the nice part about however many we have, six of them out here. I think each one of these individuals probably showed, the same way they did in the show as they are out here, and I think that's kind of refreshing. I'll be honest, I'm not super big on showmanship, not because I don't like it. It just seems like sometimes maybe the kid that if we win Class 5 at Houston, the kid that I would prefer to send back in on might be the one that's over there that gets put third or fourth because they were maybe a little more fidgety or trying or they weren't the one that just necessarily propped their sheep up and stood there. So I probably have a little bit of a different take on it maybe than some, and that's okay. I think it's important, and I think it's an opportunity that obviously these kids can highlight their skills. And it doesn't matter on exactly what the sheep looks like or the quality he is, if he was fifth in class or he was grand champion. And so that's obviously a unique aspect of it. But I think we've got some individuals out here that do a really nice job. Again, it kind of comes down to personal preference, and it kind of lands again on the one that if I have a sheep out here, which one would I or which two would I prefer to have on the head of it, and that's the beauty of having the mic today. But we've got six individuals that did a really, really nice job. They did a nice job throughout the day, throughout the show. We'll congratulate them, and we'll select our champion and reserve senior showman.
Congratulations to our champion senior showman, Landry Sutton, and second, Sissany Crow. Again, we'd like to thank our judge, Logan Newsom, for making the hall up north for the 2025 Sioux Empire Livestock Show, and also all of the exhibitors that came through the ring today, and all of our sponsors that helped make this show possible.
I'm going to sound pretty repetitive, but I think we've got a really nice class. I think we've got 4 kids out here that do a dang good job. Kind of like I talked about a little bit in the goat showmanship deal. I think that you can have different styles and ways to go about it, and I don't think everything has to be exactly the same. I think the most important part is obviously we want to try to make that animal look as high quality and as best that we can, and each one of those sheep are different, or each one of those goats are different, or whatever. So sometimes it can kind of vary, and I'm not one that's going to sit here and say you have to have this style or that, or you have to get down low, or you have to stand up, or whatever. I think that's very much left up to the exhibitor and however they feel the most comfortable in making that animal look good. So I think we've got 4 that probably all really kind of probably are a little bit different. Some that are maybe just a little more intense, maybe get a little more drive out of them. A couple of them that do a very, very good job of getting those things kind of set where they need to be and propped up and showing them off. So 4 individuals out here that I think do an outstanding job. I'm sure their future is very, very bright within this industry. I'd like to congratulate those 4, and we'll go out and we'll name our champion in reserve for our junior showmanship.